Dion Hinchcliffe here, VP and Principal Analyst at Constellation Research, covering future of work and the new C-suite.
And I'm Doug Henschen, VP and Principal Analyst, covering data to decisions. And we're your co-hosts for episode 55 of CRTV.
And as always, we're here to talk about news, trends, and innovations in enterprise technology.
And in this episode, following the news, my colleague Holger Mueller and I will discuss recent announcements from the Google Cloud Summit in a segment we call Google Talk.
And then we're going to share a special segment from our recent Ambient Experience Summit that we just held in Napa Valley. It was a gala event. We had our AX100 award ceremony. We had tremendous speakers like BJ Fogg talking about how to create behavioral-oriented experiences and lots more. So there'll be highlights from all of that coming in this show. But first, let's get to the news.
Well, in what we thought might be an early April Fool's joke, Italy's Data Protection Authority on March 31st announced the country would ban ChatGPT and investigate OpenAI, citing potential violations of the EU's General Data Protection Regulation, or GDPR. Now, OpenAI temporarily took ChatGPT offline on March 20 after discovering and self-reporting a bug in open source libraries that expose some users' data, titles, and even some messages. Now, the Italian regulators said there was no legal basis to justify the mass collection and storage of personal data for the purpose of training. Now, regulators in the UK, Ireland, and Germany also signaled in early April that they too are investigating OpenAI, though they stopped short of a ban. Italy gave OpenAI 20 days to address the concerns, or it could impose fines of more than 21 million or 4% of annual revenues. So the ban was announced a few days after an organization, a nonprofit called the Future of Life Institute, released a letter calling for a pause in the development of AI-powered chatbots like ChatGPT and Google's Bard until agreement can be reached on privacy safeguards. The letter was signed by more than 1,000 tech leaders, including Elon Musk and Apple co-founder Steve Wozniak. To my mind, there's no way of putting the generative AI tech back in the genie's bottle, but this does point up the need to have some way of tagging data, perhaps using metadata to show that certain data should not be used for training. Dion, I'm sure you have some thoughts on this.
Yeah, it was interesting, Doug. The rise of VPN downloads, there was 400% increase in the number of VPN installations in Italy right after the announcement. So in case you're thinking this is all a tempest in a teapot, ChatGPT has become a global phenomenon and it's being used everywhere. It's very interesting. But yeah, the generative AI revolution is clearly here. 2023 has been a tremendous year for it. We've seen 2 of the 3 major cloud vendors offer solutions. Of course, Microsoft is partnered closely with OpenAI, the company behind GPT-4 and ChatGPT, who has this very compelling large language model that has, I think some special sauce that really differentiates it. It can reason across the data that it actually has in a way that the others really can't. But Google hasn't sat still, and they have their own offering with the Vertex AI that was recently announced. But they're really going for large language model choice. They're saying, we're going to be able to offer you foundational models that are experts on certain industries or certain domains, or even build one for your own enterprise data. So they're going for a much more open version where, even though OpenAI is called that, and it started out with that vision, its model is currently closed, which many have observed. But this has really seemed to have left one of the 3 players out entirely. We haven't heard anything really from Amazon. I mean, they're doing some work with a partner called Hugging Face, which is a large language model. But they're not pursuing it, at least yet. I assume just like Microsoft and Google did, they're scrambling to get out ahead of this and say, this is a major growth industry. We are, in the middle of it. We're leading that story. And Amazon doesn't have that yet. It does have some really good cloud capabilities for training large language models. So for companies who want to go into AI and build something like GPT-4, Amazon provides the infrastructure for that, but they don't have their own commercially trained large language model that we're aware of yet. And so are they falling out of the race is the big question. So we'll see. Amazon's currently dealing with a lot of churn and a lot of layoffs and all of the consequences of that from an organizational standpoint. But I suspect we're going to see something at some point because just the growth factor, AI is projected to be as big as cloud. So if you're a cloud company, you're not investing in AI, you're missing out on that. It'll be a $1 trillion business by the end of the decade. So it's interesting. And so that's where I think that's going.
Yeah, I had a chat with an AWS executive earlier this week. I'm doing a market overview on analytics and BI. Natural language query, natural language generation are very much in that domain. And I'm still kind of parse out exactly what they said to me, but there were intimations that AWS is going there with and has LLM capabilities that they're going to be exploiting and bringing into products. But I didn't get any official announcements, and I'm still trying to tease out exactly what they had to say in terms of whether LLMs are really there under the hood. But part of that is, we're getting into high-tech conference season. I've had the pleasure of attending 2 virtual and 1 in-person event very recently. I'll start off with Google Cloud Summit, a virtual event held on March 29. The big announcements included a new multi-level pricing scheme for BigQuery. So they have standard, enterprise, enterprise plus. It's basically basic SQL querying, then adding analytical capabilities, and then finally enterprise plus, all the high availability, etc. AlloyDB Omni is their transactional database service, but with Omni, you can now run that anywhere, including on-prem, on laptops, and on other clouds. Looker Data Modeling is a new offering just for the semantic modeling capabilities of Looker as a service. It's going to run on Google Cloud, but you can have this look at data in any database, Redshift, Snowflake, as well as BigQuery. Looker runs on all these databases and on-prem databases. So the idea is to use that consistent semantic data modeling, consistent reuse of information. It's always been a strength of Looker. And something I point up in my market overview that'll be published later this month on BI and analytics, a real strength of what Looker has to offer now, making that available as a service. And then finally, Google's generative AI announcements. We don't have time to get into it here, but stay tuned because Holger Mueller and I are going to cover these announcements in detail in the next segment. Now, the second event I attended, a virtual event, was Domopalooza. And they were highlighting low-code, no-code, mid-code, and pro-code features. On the low-code, no-code front, they had general availability of their Microsoft 365 integrations. And then on pro-code, they have a workflow engine coming for automation, another emerging theme, and then Jupyter Notebook integration for increasing their data science capabilities. And then finally, they announced Domo Cloud Amplifier for consistent low latency data access across multiple clouds. And then finally, I also attended the SaaS Analyst Conference in Cary, North Carolina at their headquarters. Lots of NDAs and disclosures for analysts, kind of a heads up of what's coming. But I think the big takeaway is that SaaS Viya 4 is here. It's their company modern platform. No longer talk of they're trying to put the SaaS 9 conversations to rest. It's available as SaaS services and as a platform as a service on Azure. But also, I think that they've been working hard on making this platform available on any cloud, doing all the container work and all the for native deployment. And they offer SaaS managed deployments, one-off hosted deployments on AWS and Google, as well as the Azure services-based offerings. They also detailed work they're doing to prepare for their potential IPO. This is a $3 billion private company. It's 46 years old, sort of unprecedented to be going public at this late stage in their history, but they're working towards that perhaps as early as 2024.
So I'll just wrap up. The last big thing we had last week in Napa was our Ambient Experience event. And it was probably something that was at the Culinary Institute of America. And so we had the attendees come in and create culinary experiences on the evening before. And then we had Liz Miller, our excellent analyst on customer experience, did a tremendous job co-hosting with myself. and we had a bunch of great speakers. And the real takeaway was interesting for me because we're seeing digital experience becoming essential to everything, becoming core to business. And when I look at, we had a bunch of people come up and tell their stories, and I saw really two distinct tracks. One is there are experienced leaders that are doing a tremendous job by following all the processes, using a very KPI-centric, OKR-centric approach, and being very analytical about the whole process and doing A/B testing. And looking at NPS scores, and that's what they managed to. And then there was another set of experienced leaders that were taking a different approach. They were really teaching the foundational basics to everyone, saying everyone's in digital experience, and here's how you have to treat the customer, and you have to do whatever it takes to ensure that outcome and to do the right thing. And they were absolutely leaders in their field as well. You could see it in what their companies had achieved, and so it was remarkable. We see there's more than one route to get to really great digital experience. And that was one of the takeaways is there's no one right answer. There are multiple paths that will get you there, and really it's more of a cultural fit thing. Are you really into the math and science of it all, or do you really care about deeply instilling the care about the customer and what you're doing? So that was interesting. Really interesting stories that we heard there. So it was great to see. You'll get more details, highlights in the segment later on in the show. And we'll have videos rolling out all year. So if you couldn't make it down there, you'll be able to catch it online soon.
Well, that's it for this week's news summary, but stay tuned for our analysis of recent Google announcements, including their generative AI moves, followed by our CRTV segment from the Constellation Ambient Experience Summit. Hey folks, Doug Henschen here with Constellation Research, and I'm with my colleague Holger Mueller to talk about the big announcements at Google Cloud Summit, a virtual event held on March 29th. So we'll be talking about Google BigQuery, AlloyDB, Looker Data Modeler, and of course, Google's approach to generative AI. But first, Google Cloud Summit, another virtual event for Google. They seem to be doing a lot of Google virtual stuff, even the in-person Google Cloud Next coming in August. It's going to be at Moscone, but also virtual.
Every large vendor, cloud vendor or not, needs to have two major events. One is the conference, user conference, Google Next, obviously, and then the other one is an analyst meeting. And I found it quite convenient to have it done virtually. What did you think, Doug?
Yeah, I'm liking the virtual events, actually, so it's not quite so many live, and I agree. The pattern is the larger vendors are sticking more with virtual and having like one big event, like Microsoft Build is going to be in May, but it's totally in person. It's surprised that they're not having it kind of a hybrid.
Yeah, Build is a developer conference from its DNA, so I'm not so much surprised from that perspective. It's very similar like Google I.O. I think that's also happening in person, so we'll see that. But hey, let's get to the key takeaways. You're out of the chute first. You're the pole position. What's your first big takeaway?
Start with BigQuery. They announced a new pricing structure. All the features include auto scaling. They also announced data clean rooms. So back before this new pricing structure, they had flat rates and $5 per terabyte, and then $2,000 per month per slot. That's their virtual CPU. And this new scheme, they're going to have standard, enterprise, enterprise plus, and it starts at 4 cents, goes up to 6 cents for the enterprise, 10 cents per slot hour for the enterprise plus, and you gradually gain features. As you need more features, you're essentially paying for those features. Like with enterprise, you get query acceleration, built-in ML models, object tables, advanced security. Enterprise plus, you're moving up into mission critical, high availability features, customer managed encryption, FedRAMP and ITAR and other compliance regimes. So it's kind of play for what you get. And then, to me, it's about flexibility, predictability, and control. This is very much in people's minds these days. FinOps, cloud price optimization, and you'll be able to mix and match these additions. So it's not like all or nothing. You can choose, standard for your SQL-oriented workloads that are pretty conventional. Move up to enterprise when you need the advanced stuff. All of them have auto scaling. So to me, it's a good offer. They also have the 1 year and 3 year discounts. Flat rate is part of this. Their flat rate on-demand compute is going to go up 25%. So I think Google itself is wanting this predictability and stability, and and sort of discouraging a little bit the on-demand and trying to get people more into those 1 year and 3 year commitments.
Yeah, they certainly make any planning for cloud vendors much easier, right? From the commitment perspective, it's also catering to the typical fear of the company of not knowing how much to have to pay, right? So if I reserved instance, I run out of capacity, but I know what I'm paying for the month. So that is a key difference, or key something welcome by CXOs. Yeah, great point. And the auto scaling basically is good for everybody because it means that Google can make instance available for other customers quickly. So it's a smart move, and it's typical generation 2, 3 often offering when it gets auto scaling or serverless or whatever you want to call this. So it's good. It's maturing.
So on to Alloy.
Yeah, Alloy, very interesting to see, right? So I think Google is acknowledging that transactions are relevant, first of all, right? They didn't have many transactions, database offerings in their portfolio went out from the start, out from the get-go. We were all on the NoSQL document craze at the time, like 8-9 years ago. Now it's very, very different, and they acknowledge also that transactions need to run everywhere, from a performance, from data residency, from a cloud not trusting, not invented here part, right? And they want to make it standard, right, with PostgreSQL, which is a smart move. And kind of like unfortunate as someone who had to learn 6 years of Latin, right? I think the BigQuery Omni has a different meaning than the AlloyDB Omni, but it's fine. Omni means everywhere, and AlloyDB runs everywhere. It's a typical generation 1 offering. As we've seen that too, Doug, many times, right? It's downloadable, right? So it's up to the customer to make it run somewhere, which is not exactly what most CIOs, CTOs want, because it's complex to run these things, maintain a database and so on. So I think we'll see a generation 2, 3 of the offering where Google will support that. It's very well auto-scaling. They took a note of what all new databases do, that it's transactional and spatial columns to support both OLAP and OLTP needs in one, which is a major driver for people to build next-generation applications. And deep down, they, of course, hope they only say the legacy database vendor, right? We all know who is the elephant in the room, the company a little up from Google headquarters at Redwood Shores, right? Or actually no longer the headquarters. Our headquarters moved to Austin. We're talking about Oracle. Everybody has tried to get Oracle workloads to their cloud. Super interesting, of course. Nobody has really managed to get anything significant. For my research, basically, it's because Oracle transactional systems are so critical. And if you touch something, it's like a piece of spaghetti moving all the other stuff. And usually you don't have the capacity, appetite, willingness for risk to move so much stuff, right? So this is why it has failed in the past. But I think it's great for people to try and get innovation into the transactional space.
Well, to clarify, this failed on moving legacy workloads that are on Oracle. The win has been a lot of day forward, new development, new systems, new applications.
Absolutely right? So, but the statement is like legacy database vendors, aka Oracle, and no major big workloads have been moved away from Oracle because they run Exadata really and their own database really well.
Yeah, and I agree. There's a little bit of a branding question there with Omni. With AlloyDB, it's Omni anywhere. With BigQuery Omni, it's BigQuery querying in a multi-cloud, but it all goes back to the centralized BigQuery.
And it's supported by Google on the other clouds, right? Here you take the download, you install it, and you're up to the races of your own. Yeah, so that's fine. Marketing, what do you do?
Google on other clouds, they introduced a Looker data modeler. Now, Google was an up-and-coming BI analytics vendor when Google bought it in 2019, and what they saw was its data modeling and governance capabilities. So that promotes consistency and reuse. It's kind of a strength of those old-school BI analytics products like MicroStrategy and Business Objects, and something that would enable it to work with the Tableaus and Power BIs. Those self-service vendors have had to add that sort of modeling capability in recent years. So with this Looker data modeler service, they're betting that this standalone service, which will run on Google Cloud, will appeal because it supports multiple front ends, Power BI, Tableau, Looker Zone, Data Studio Pro. But it's also, the key appeal of Looker was it always ran on top of multiple databases, including Snowflake, including Redshift, and including BigQuery. And, I'm doing a market overview right now on analytics and BI products, and Google has stayed true to this multi-cloud capability. They actually run Looker as a service on AWS and Azure, as well as on Google Cloud. So they've stayed true to that Looker heritage. I think that'll be one appeal of this multi-cloud data modeling service, because you can bring in data from anywhere, you can model data from anywhere and have that semantic layer that's consistent and promotes reuse. What I didn't see in those announcements was anything in their generative AI capabilities that would apply to Looker. So I'm hoping that's coming downstream, but let's move on to the generative AI capabilities.
Yeah, but hold on 1 second. Shouldn't they have called it Looker Omni long time ago? If anybody from Google Marketing is listening, hey, we call you out for consistency. If you support it in different clouds, it should be Omni, right? But fine. Yeah. The Omni family at Google. Yeah, no event these days without AI. Interesting enough, the summit was still called Data and AI. I think kudos to Google to acknowledge that it's first data and then AI. I think the big announcement from the news side is the generative application, the generative AI app builder offering, which allows developers, right? We know there's not enough AI specialists, data scientists, and so on to build generative AI apps. Very interesting that they're multimodal from the get-go. We know in situations we're building applications before to make them multimodal across images, video, text, search, and so on. That's a steep for traditional applications in order to get there. So very good to see a generation 1 product being multimodal right away. And obviously getting the hearts of the developers is the key part, because again, there's not enough AI specialists to build all the generative AI apps that businesses need and probably have to compete on. Obviously, all of this comes available to the existing AI offering, which is Vertex AI, right? Which gets something which I really like from the name, the model garden, right? It's like the holy garden or whatever you believe in, or the garden where you go when you pass. So in the model garden, you can pick the right AIs, models that you want, foundational AIs as well. And choose what you want to run with them, which is very powerful and is all about getting those applications done very early. I think it's good that Google sticks to the Vertex AI path, because we all don't like if vendors change or rename the things all the time. And last but not least, to a certain point surprising, Google is partnering with NVIDIA, right? Basically the antidote to AI in the cloud, because NVIDIA offers chips and provides them on premises, obviously, and many companies do that. And many of the cloud vendors who came late to the cloud, aka Oracle and now Microsoft as well, from the AI perspective, supporting it, they are partnering with NVIDIA. But surprising, Google is doing this, who, in my view, has a significant lead, and they are getting the first customer to get the new NVIDIA L4 CPU, GPU, which is super powerful and reduced performance to build large models by 2%. They're partnering other levels too. Customers will have access to NVIDIA software, right? So it's open from the Google Marketplace. They're doing things around making things more efficient on the green side. So it's a multifaceted partnership from Google with NVIDIA. It's good to see, because CX also running on NVIDIA, want to see the NVIDIA chips and all the clouds they're running on. So smart move.
All right. Well, that's all the time we have for Google Talk. Thanks to Holger Mueller for joining me, and happy cloud computing.
Hey everyone, we are here for a live at AXS 2023. We are here filming a little CRTV segment. We are bringing this to you live from Napa. So welcome. We got a great audience in the room. They are busy taking a survey. There they are. I love it. We love hearing it, but we wanted to bring a classic CRTV conversation with one of our friends. Dion, have you been having a good time?
I've been having a blast. So yeah, this is Dion Hinchcliffe, a VP and Principal Analyst at Constellation Research. So we're looking forward to have a conversation with our good friend Anthony here. Okay, so Anthony, hi.
Hi, Liz.
Welcome to CRTV.
Thank you.
Okay, so you got to let our audience know, who are you? What do you do? What do you do? Who do you do it for?
Sure. So my name is Anthony Noble. I am the Chief Strategy Officer at American Tower. We're a publicly traded real estate investment trust with over 200,000 cell towers in 26 countries and 33 data centers in the United States. My role as the Chief Strategy Officer is really about devising the global strategy for the company. And so experiences like we're having today have been invaluable to me as we start to think about kind of our next the next steps in our strategy.
Love it, love it. What have been some of the big things for you guys? I mean, with communications changing so much, with connectivity changing so much, what have been some of those things that you've had to keep up with over the past year?
I think the big thing for us is really trying to figure out how do we assist our customers in providing the next great digital experience for their customers, right? And so as you look and we go the transition from, in a lot of our markets, 3G, 4G, now 5G, but then also understanding that there are a number of new devices that are on those networks, right? And the expectations that the end user has for what they can expect to really receive and do with their mobile devices.
And now, is that because things like 5G and 5.5G allow this much more bandwidth, much lower latency, lower powered sensors and devices? You can create smart factories and smart buildings and smart cities. Is that part of it? Or?
Yeah, that's part of it. I mean, you just have the exponential growth in the number of devices that are actually using networks, and how we provide those networks has changed quite a bit.
Everything that can be connected is going to be connected,
Exactly.
It looks like, right? Yeah.
Exactly.
So what has become the hardest thing about keeping that strategy moving forward? Like, has anything really changed where you're like, I want that to go back in the box, like, stop?
I think really what we look at is we have customers that are in different stages of mobile connectivity,
Yep.
right? So we have some countries that we operate in where you have transition from 3G to 4G. Other countries like the US, right, 5G, and how do you make that next great digital experience possible, right?
How do you make the tower look like a pine tree versus a palm tree?
Happy to do that wherever.
Okay, great. I'm just saying, like, have we not all seen that? It's pretty great. I love it.
Yeah,
Anyway, go ahead.
yeah.
Go ahead.
And a lot of that is not our doing, but like the communities sometimes.
Like, I need it
would
to look like
us
a palm tree.
Yeah,
I get
exactly.
you. Okay, I live in one of those communities. I get it.
Yeah, but really, it's just trying to deliver on inclusion, right?
Yeah.
Digital inclusion is a big thing for us right now. When we look around a number of the markets that we operate in, we recently we're involved in the Edison Alliance through the World Economic Forum, which is really about connecting the next generation or not the next generation, but actually a number of people who are less connected.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So what then becomes that driving factor for something like that, right? You're trying to connect communities, people, groups that aren't traditionally leaning into or leaning forward to some of these new technologies. Like, Dion, you tell him there's a new technology, he probably already has it, right? Like, the kids are already using it, like, it's a whole thing, right? But there's going to be large swaths of communities that are going to be truly underserved for lots of different reasons.
Right.
How does that start to become a driving principle for not only the organization, but everyone who's within it?
Yeah, for us, again, it's digital inclusion. It's making sure that, when you look at, again, the 26 countries that we operate in, making sure that those countries have a robust and reliable digital economy. And part of that is making sure that there's power to connect, to provide those mobile networks. But then the other side of it is making sure that we're doing it in the most sustainable manner possible.
Well, in those communities, because I think a lot of them are underbanked and they actually use their mobile phones as their primary payment system, so it becomes critical for them to even buy food to have those networks available, right?
Yeah, and then also just how people share information. In some of the markets that we're in, you'll see where there may be a handful of mobile devices in a community, and that's how, that person is the anchor for that community, and they're distributing information.
I took a tour of Africa, and I found that the tribal elders were using Twitter to post, someone to find a lost animal. It would take it into somebody who had a phone, they'd take a picture of it, post it on Twitter, and then the owner would eventually see it there and go, there it is.
Yeah. But you also have micro business. I mean, there are women in South Africa who will have pedal-powered charging stations, and they are now starting businesses that are now literally uplifting entire communities because they're literally creating a charging bank for their phones, and it becomes this kind of critical infrastructure throughout South Africa that's so interesting. So let's get personal.
Okay.
how'd you get into your job? Like, how did you get here?
Wow.
You're chief strategy officer. Like, what? There's no course. You didn't major in chief strategy officer at the university. Like, what got you here?
That's true. I actually, it was really serendipitous. I happened to walk into the American Tower headquarters one day, met with the then chairman and CEO of the company. And we were talking about
like one does, just walks into a headquarter and says, "Please give me a job." That's awesome. I love it.
And I was talking about what I was working on. He was talking about what he was working on. There were some amazing growth opportunities at the company. I thought in terms of, growing the profile of the company, but also where the company was headed. It was outside of the Fortune 500 at the time. Now we're probably in the Fortune 300 or so.
Oh yeah, just one of those little throwaway bad boys there.
And so I ended up, he said, hey, it'd be great if you worked here as his chief of staff. And for me, coming out of university, probably very early on, wanting to work with someone who had the, one, just the qualities that you look for in a leader, but then two, understanding that you're going to learn a lot in the different challenges that an organization faces as a publicly traded company.
That's awesome. So rule number one, just randomly walk into Fortune 300 companies, right? Like that's advice piece number one. Just walk into a Fortune 500 company and just start talking to people.
That's right.
That's okay. So you did not hear that here. That's, no one's recording this. It's fine. So, Diane, you ask a question. I feel like I'm hogging.
So you were talking about, you've got all this infrastructure, and one of the biggest conversations that I'm hearing in people in your business is that now, the whole dumb pipe fallacy or the anti-pattern is happening again, where you're building everything, and all these great companies, these startups and the hyperscalers and these big media companies and YouTube are just taking all the bandwidth, forcing you guys to build out more, while you're just taking the crumbs at the bottom of the pile. They're making all the margin at the top. So are you tasked with trying to figure out how you can layer more and get more value from the infrastructure that you guys are building?
So we do focus on how do we enable our traditional customer, which is the mobile network operator, to generate more value for their networks. But at the same time now, because we are not only just a cell tower company, but we have this data center business, the Googles and others are also a customer of ours. And so what we're really
playing both sides, right?
So what we're trying to do is we're trying to build out the mobile edge. And that's where we think that, having more compute power between the end user and the data center will have that enhanced digital experience that will hopefully drive value for our traditional customer and our current generation of data center customers.
Still, that's a pretty hot seat for you to be in, because very few people have figured that out, right?
That is true. And that's why we're here.
It's like, that's why I walked into the company, Diane, and started talking to him, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
So where do you think it's all going? You and I had a great conversation last night and talking about AI, and we talked, there's big trends out there like decentralization, which most people aren't even tracking, right? So this is the whole, Web3 and everything. If you were going to place a wild bet, what do you think is going to be big that most people aren't expecting?
It's the immersive stuff that you talked about earlier. I think the fact is that, today we walk around and we have these great computing devices in our hands, and we use them or in our pockets, and we use them for very sort of what probably seems like today routine things.
But they have more power than mainframes had like 30 years ago. Yeah?
Exactly. And then when you get the other devices that come in to provide that enhanced experience, I think it's really just going to be it's going to be incredible to see the world that we live in.
Well, convergence, I think, is probably the big thing, right? All this is going to come together and then be infinitely useful, right? So,
Well, at least I got one word of the infinite in there. I mean, I got part of it, right? Okay. Listen, thank you so much for being here. Thank you guys for being here. But more importantly, thank you guys for tuning in. We're going to be back with more segments on CRTV.
Well, that's a wrap for episode 55 of CRTV. Get set for the next episode coming in just 2 weeks.
That's right. Watch for our co-hosts, Holger Mueller and Liz Miller, who will bring you episode 56 of CRTV. In the meantime, follow us on Twitter at CRTV_show, at our website, ConstellationR.com, and subscribe to Constellation Research on YouTube so you won't miss an episode.
Thanks for watching and have a great week.
All right, I gotta clear my throat. All right, there we have a nice gap. It's the morning. I gotta get the eye drops in. All right, put me in the top right where I belong, and maybe I should get closer. You seem to be close to the action here. And I'm Doug Henschen. You want to try that again? Dated to Decisions, and we're your co-hosts for episode.
Episode. That's what you're doing, Doug. This is episode.
And some messaging to the open web, or let me do this again.
Yep.
I'm having a bad day.
Great. Well, that went smoothly.
Yeah, and you got some good bloopers.
More or less.
Yeah.
Yeah, smoothly as in now I have good content.